Hey friends, Christy here with Little Ritz Ranch, and today we are going to make applesauce. And technically this is also the lead up to making apple butter, and I'll give directions for continuing on at the very end. But the main topic of the video is applesauce. And applesauce is one of my absolute favorite things to make. And the reason why is because if you have an apple tree or a neighbor with an apple tree or anyone in your community with an apple tree, a lot of people will give away the apples, and you get so many. And making applesauce I love having it throughout the entire winter, spring, summer, whatever. It's always easy just to have for a quick, easy breakfast. Or if you make unsweetened applesauce like I'm gonna make today, I'll show you the instructions for adding sugar and things like that. But then you can use it as a sugar replacement in baking, and there's just a lot of things where you can use applesauce, which continues the harvest, and that's always what's really important. So today I'm going to show you the way that I make it, which is exactly like. Let me show you. I've got two different guides here. The one that I always use this is from the National Center of Home Preservation. And they have a lot of really good information about canning. Usually you can just type in whatever you're wanting to can in National Center, and it'll be the first one to come up. So applesauce National Center. But this is one way. And the other way that's in here, this is in the Home Preserving Ball book. This is an older version, and it has the applesauce right over here. Now, the two recipes differ slightly in that this one, which is the one that we will be following, does not have lemon juice. I personally don't like the flavor that the lemon juice imparts. If you are using sweetener, I don't think it makes a difference, but I'm not using sweetener, and so I don't want to use the lemon juice. And so that's the National Home Center. It does water bath for 10 minutes longer, and that's the trade-off. Both of these are tested recipes. For the one in the ball book, it's also, it does have the lemon juice, and then the sugar is optional, and it water baths for 10 minutes later. Both are safe, both are tested, and you can choose whichever one you like. My personal preference though, I don't want to add the lemon juice, and so I use this one. But if this is what you have, this is also okay, because if you add sugar, the lemon juice doesn't make a difference. Also, my apples it's an heirloom variety, and so naturally they're not as sweet. They're still absolutely delicious, but they're not some of the newer, like Sugar Bee, Honeycrisp, all those that you bite into, and it's like literal sugar. These apples, they're still super amazing, but they don't have that extra sweetness, and so they're more of, I guess, a little bit tart, but they do have sweetness, but I don't know, adding the lemon juice just doesn't work for me. So that's my personal preference. But anyways, just letting you know the resources that are available, because if you're brand new, it's always good to kind of have a couple different things to research. For the ball book, it usually gives a standard recipe, but what I like about the National Center is they usually break it up. So for instance, they say for a canner load of 7 quarts, which is on average, it's 21 pounds of apples, which is what we'll be doing today, but also breaks it in. If you want to do a canner load of 19 pints, 9 pints, it's 13.5 pounds. Or if you're not sure how much you want to do, they break it up to it's about 3 pounds of apples per quart, and you can see how you do that, or depending on how many you want to have. I'll be honest, when I'm doing it myself, I always do a double batch. I have really large pots and able to do that. But for today's video, I'm only gonna do a single batch. So I'm gonna do the 21 pounds of apples to hopefully get 9 quarts of apple juice, or applesauce, sorry. But anyways, I guess I should get going and go get those apples. So I'm gonna put on my harvest thing, a bucket or anything, even a shirt top also works, or if you bought a bushel of apples. This one is like a koala pouch that snaps on. My best friend got it for me and I love using it. But anyways, let's go get 21 pounds of apples.
The cool thing about applesauce is really you can use any apple, a really sweet apple, a tart apple, a small apple, a large apple. All apples work in the applesauce recipe, and it comes in very handy. And here I'm just emptying all the apples and weighing them to make sure I get the right amount.
All right, apples harvested. I did have to grab a second batch because I can fit about 18 pounds of apples in my little kangaroo patch. The next step is that I'm going to quarter the apples. Now, I'll say this with a caveat. You just quarter the apples as is, because I'm going to run my applesauce through a mill, which will remove skin, seeds, and everything else. I have them soaking in the water and I've rinsed them. So I'm just taking my quartered apples and putting them directly into the pot. Here's the thing. If you do not have a food mill, then you need to peel them and core them before you put them in your pot. And the reason is, so what a food mill, obviously I'll get to it, but it's basically, they're not too bad. Mine's from Amazon, not sponsored or whatever. There's metal ones, plastic ones, old ones, new ones. But basically, all of the produce or the applesauce goes through it, and it has like these little, like a mesh wire thing. And so all of the sauce and the inner like pulp of the apple go through the wire mesh, but the skin and all the seeds and all that doesn't. So that's the caveat here, is that if you do not have a food mill, you would be peeling and coring now. Now there is some discussion of whether people peel or not on their apples, and the one thing I'll say about that is that all of the government agencies recommend that you peel your apples, and so that should always be your first advice. That said, I know there's a lot of people who do not peel them or whatever, just like people have different rules for their kitchen. But mine run through food mill, so they'll technically be peeled by themselves. Now, I'm gonna get to finish cutting the rest of these in just a moment, and I'll do fast mode on the video. But I do want to say what I honestly think is the most important part of this video. So this is my pot here, and this is my most favorite pot. The reason why is that it has a very, very, very thick bottom. I don't know if you could see that. I don't know who makes it. Ballington? I'm not sure, but it is a very heavy bottom pan. Now that is super important, because after I get all these apples cut up, I'm gonna put a teensy bit of water and I'm gonna put them on the oven. And it's hard to stir because there's a lot of apples. If you have a thin bottom pan, if you have an aluminum pan, if you have a medium bottom pan, these apples will stick to the bottom like it is no joke. It is almost embarrassing how horrible it is. Even with a medium pan, I'll show you my pan I first started off with. Even this pan, which is good, this is a Kirkland pan. It's good pan, but it's like it's not thin, but it's like a medium-ish bottom, and it is stainless steel. And with this one, I could only do a half batch at a time, because obviously it's not as big as the bigger one. But even still, lots of scrubbing. I tried one time to use an aluminum pan. That was absolutely horrible. I've tried actually using my pressure canner pan, and that did a pretty good job. But I went ahead and invested. This one I got from the country store in Arlington. I think it's called Arlington Hardware, but same difference to me. But it's a really thick bottom pan. And I'm telling you, if you are cooking a lot, it really makes a difference. But especially with these apples, because if you don't have a thick bottom pan, you will have like scalding at the bottom, even if you stir a lot, I promise you. But anyways, I just wanted to, of all the things I can share about my experience with cooking, canning, and especially applesauce, apple butter, anything to do with apple, the biggest bottom pan that you have. Even I've used like a Le Creuset, I maybe probably said that wrong, but the big, just whatever you're cooking in, try and have it be your biggest, but also your biggest bottom pan. But anyways, I'm gonna put it in fast mode, finish up these apples, and then I'm gonna get them in that pan, or pot, I guess, and probably do about 4 cups of water or so. I think in the book it says, or in the paper it says just enough so the apples don't burn. I find between 4 to 6 cups is good. If you put too much, you have to cook it longer or have more liquidy applesauce. If you put too little, they'll burn, and that's not fun either. But anyway, so I'm gonna put it in fast mode, and I'll come back to you just a moment. Okay, so we got all the apples cut up, and so now I'm gonna run my cold water, and I'm gonna put in about 5 cups of water to prevent sticking. And then I'm gonna put it on about just a little over medium, so that way it starts to get it steaming and get the apples softening up. I won't be able to stir the apples right away because obviously, as you can tell, we're a little maxed out on size. But as they start cooking down, then I'll be able to stir and actually have a long wooden spoon that I have. Let me show you real quick. Like this is my long wooden spoon, and this is a regular wooden spoon or whatever, like for normal cooking. And so this I think it's like 16 inches or something, but it makes it so that I can stir even in the big canning things. But okay, so I'm gonna get this on the oven, and then I'm gonna turn it just over medium. Get this lid on. It doesn't fit all the way. And then I'm just gonna watch it. Basically, it'll start to melt as soon as I'm able to get in there. And it's kind of like a flipping motion. Like I'll put my spoon right against the edge and then try and flip up to mix. But I need them to soften first, because right now they're packed in there. And then as they soften, I can maneuver it around. And so then once they're soft enough to be able to go through the food mill, then I'll pull them off and I'll be right back with you. So just a moment. All right, y'all. So I am back. I am able to stir it now. I actually did something really interesting. I don't remember I was talking about that medium bottom pot that I used. I actually took some of the apples out of here and put it in there, so I have 2. Because I thought that would be more relatable if you're newer in your canning journey. When I do my applesauce, I actually have a huge turkey roaster that I use exclusively for processing tomato sauce and applesauce. And it's huge. It's like, I don't know, 30 quart or something. I don't know what it is, but it's made for the biggest turkey, and I can fit a whole lot of apples in there. But I didn't use that for this video because I felt like it wasn't relatable. And so I was having a little bit of problem fitting everything in my pan. And so I was thinking, I was like, you know what, you may not have a huge pan. So I'm actually using 2 pans here. I thought that would be more relatable. But I was gonna show you the stirring method. I know it sounds weird, but it's really hard to kind of get the spoon in when you have so many apples in here and they're just starting to get steam and stuff like that. I also wanted to show you, so this is my stove obviously, but this is a pressure canner, but I'm not using it to pressure can. What I do is I do use it as my water bath canner. So you'll notice I have the water in there. I just don't seal it so it doesn't create the pressure. I personally use the pressure canner as my regular canner because it is thinner. I do not have a 6-burner stove or a very large stove or things like that. And so this pressure canner is fairly narrow, and because my buttons are back here, and it just makes it easier. So that's why I use it. So if you see the pressure canner out, I do use it for pressure canning as well, but today we are not pressure canning. So anyways, I'll set that back on. To show you the stir method I was talking about, it's like a dig, scoop. And so I can hear the water boiling down at the bottom. Remember we added in that water? And so it's kind of, the apples are turning a little bit brown because they were not treated with citric acid or lemon juice. You can do that if you like. I don't mind if they turn a little bit of brown. That's the normal apple thing. But so it's shove all the way in and then kind of wedge over. And then you really want to get the middle. And so you do the same, you see some of like this apple is starting to be really soft because that was in the middle. And so I want to kind of keep doing that so that way all the apples can be nice and soft and get exposure to that steam. But anyways, so I'll put the lid back on there and let that keep steaming. And then I'll show you, this is the food mill that'll be our next step. This is the one that I use. I got on Amazon a few years ago, Johnny Applesauce maker or whatever. And so you can see here, I've actually, well, I was waiting for my apples to get done. I set it up over on the edge of my counter, which we'll get to in a second. But you can see kind of how it comes together. So you put all the applesauce in there, it comes down and then gets pushed technically through this one, but this is inside of there. And so all of the solids come out through the end and they go into a separate little container. And then all of the pulp and juice and all the good parts, they come out here and actually fall down into another container that you'll have. I'll show you that obviously later on, but wanted to show you that now kind of to give you understanding. But I'll bring you back when these apples are ready. Okay, well, I'd actually just filmed this, but I realized that my camera didn't capture it, which is odd because my camera also didn't catch the fast mode of me cutting the apples earlier. So we'll try it again. Okay, so I brought my apples over, which you can see right there. And then I have my food mill set up right here. And so I filled this hopper thing, if you will, full of nice hot apples. And then I'm going to crank to mill it. Now, this is the way that I do it. There are other options, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show. If you don't have a food mill, then you would have seeded and peeled your apples early on. And so for this stage, instead of doing this, what you would do is get it to the consistency that you like. So if you like a chunky applesauce, odds are that it might already be good to go. If you wanted to make it more mixed or thin or something like that, that's where you could use a like a potato smasher to kind of break it up, or an immersion blender, or in batches into a regular blender. There really isn't a bad, the recipe itself is acidic enough, and so it's whatever texture that you prefer. If it's too thin, you can cook it a little bit more. If it's too thick, you can add a teensy bit of water, but it's where you kind of get it where you want to get it. As I was scooping this, I noticed that today, for whatever reason, it seems a little bit more on the liquidy side, so I'll probably just have to cook it a little longer. But I'd rather have to cook off a little bit of water than have it burn or anything like that. So I'll show you the actual milling process if this is what you're wanting to do. I explained the mill process earlier, and in a moment I'll actually bring you up to get a closer view of like the actual action. But basically, the apples are in here, and then I just get my arm work out and kind of mill it through. But I'll show you what it looks like on the other end. Let me bring you closer so you can see what it actually produces. Okay, so there you've got a pretty good view. All right, and then, so as you can see, coming out through this area here, this is what will become applesauce. So this is the apple, the juice, all that fun stuff. And then coming out here, you can see are the peels, the seeds, all those things that we don't want into our applesauce, which makes sense. So this process gives you a little bit of an arm workout and takes a little bit. So I'm not gonna keep you on the camera the whole time. So let me finish this up and I'll take you to the next step of when this is, which by the way, I'll fill a couple of these containers here. And then I'll have to rinse out my pot, which currently has the apple stuff in it. and then I'll put it all back in there. And then that's where I'll show you like the consistency and things like that. And that's where if you wanted to add sugar, you would add sugar. If you wanted to add spices like clove or cinnamon, that's where you would add that. Or if you were adding lemon juice or whatnot. The recipe we're following doesn't have that, but I'll bring you back when I've got it in the big pot. Just a moment.
All right, so the camera makes it look really fast. It's a little tedious, but it's not too bad. It's always good to switch arms so that way it's not so much that it's heavy, but it's just a lot of cranking, and or if you have a partner switching on or off or whatever. But honestly, it's not too bad, and it's fun to watch it turn into applesauce.
Okay, so we're down to the final canning part, which is really exciting. So I'll show you, I have all of the applesauce in here, and right now it's just apple, right? There was a little bit of water that we added to prevent scorching. I'm happy with the texture of the applesauce, and so that's really good. I have my jars over here with boiling water that are getting ready to go. I have my canner with the water. I probably shouldn't have turned it that way, but I've got everything. Let's see, put you back up here. So I've got everything ready to go, and I'm ready to start canning. If you were doing a sweetened applesauce, you would add approximately 1/8 of a cup per quart. But honestly, it depends on your taste, because if you want less sweet, of course, I'm doing in this particular batch no sugar added, but you can do less sweet, you can do more sweet. It really doesn't matter. If you wanted to do like spiced applesauce, which I sometimes do, where you can add cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, whatever. Keep in mind that the spices, especially clove, gets really strong, especially during the canning process. I have to look it up, but I think approximately for the size batch that we did, it would be like 3 teaspoons of cinnamon and 1.5 teaspoons of clove. I think that's just approximately. And then if you were making apple butter, what you would want to do is continue to cook this down to a thicker consistency. The sugar would be higher, probably about 6 to 9 cups, because it's, you put a little bit on a piece of toast, and then of course you want to add some spices like the cinnamon and clove and all that stuff. But we're just stopping at unsweetened applesauce today. So I'm going to go ahead and can that up. I'm doing mine in quarts. And so with that, it is a 1/4 inch headspace, which means 1/4 inch from the top of the jar. And then we're gonna water bath those for 20 minutes. If we were doing pints, it would be 15 minutes. And this is the recipe from the National Center of Home Food Preservation, or I forget the acronym, but basically, and so it has no added lemon juice, which is, you can always add lemon juice, of course, if you want. But anyway, so I'm gonna do the first one, and then I'll put it on fast mode and do the rest of them. So let me get one of my jars. Oh, I need to get let me sneak by you real quick. Sorry, I meant to get a paper towel, because you always want to wipe off the rim. And so I get a paper towel and I fold it a couple times. And then I have my vinegar, and I actually use that. So I'll go ahead and get it nice and wet so everything's prepped and ready to go. So I've got vinegar on here, and then I will start. Sometimes I'll get an extra one too, just for holding the jars, because they tend to get hot. I worked in restaurants for a long time, so my hands are pretty good at dealing with hot stuff. But anyways, all right, let me grab that. Let's see, are these too hot? These are pretty hot. Okay. So these are hot. So then I'm gonna use, I've got this a canning funnel. I'll put it in here. I'll grab my paper towel to help me grab it. And then I need my scoop right here. And I'm gonna go for 1/2 inch of headspace. So I just take this and I start pouring it in, which is really exciting. See it all come together. I try and pour it into one side to help reduce air bubbles. See, so it kind of fills going like that, and I find that that really helps. Of course, we will take I use a chopstick and help spread it out. Let me just grab another cup jar so I can put my funnel into. So I meant to actually grab well, no, I did about the right way. So all you do is just take this and you just run it around the side. So any air bubbles that are there can come out, and then kind of tamp it a little bit. And I will set this aside. And then I want to look for that 1/2 inch headspace. Actually, what's hot? That actually looks perfect. Then I'm going to get my paper towel with the part where I put the vinegar, and I just rub that around the outside. I've rinsed my lids. In the old recipes, you had to boil them. I do run them over hot water, under hot water, I should say. And then I always like mine, I look for, it says cur ball in the front, and I have it facing towards the thing. That's just a personal thing. And then I get a band, and you want to do it, it's hot. You want to do it fingertip tight, which means that it's not all your strength in the whole world, but it's also not using any strength. There's just a little bit kind of a thing. And then what I'm going to do is take that lid off. You always open the lid away from you because that facial is too hot. Hold on. Okay, move this out of the way. And so in a regular water bath kit, this is a pressure canner that I'm water bathing in, it'll have a basket and you'll have the basket up. This one's different. I always want to make sure the temperature of my jar, which is hot, matches the water temperature. And so they're both hot, and so that works. So I'm just going to set it right in. And I'm going to continue that process. If you had a water bath canner, you fill the basket and then you put them all down in at the same time. This one, they just go directly in, and then at the end, you usually bring it out for 5 minutes, and then you empty it, the basket. But for this one, because it does not have a basket, I turn off the heat, take it off the heat, let it sit, for about 7 minutes, then I pull them out. But anyways, I'll put it on fast mode and do the rest. Just a moment.
So this is just the process of grabbing the hot jars, filling them with the hot applesauce, and putting them in the hot canner until you have a full canner.
Alrighty, so I was going to do 7 for the canner load, but I realized that I've got a lot more left, so I'm actually going to do 2 batches. So I'll just show you the first batch. They're going to be exactly the same. So I ended up going with the 6 in there, and so that way the batches are equal sizes. But as you can tell, I'm using this again as a water bath canner. Ow, hot, I shouldn't have touched that. I'm using this as a water bath canner and not a pressure canner. As you can see, the water is well over 1 inch over the lids. And the thing is that it's starting to come to a boil, as you can tell, but it's not at a hard boil. So what I'm gonna do, so this has to water bath for 20 minutes, but the water bath doesn't start till it's doing a rolling boil, like a full boil with the jars in it. So I won't make it sit there waiting for that. But it probably takes about 5 or so minutes after you put the jars in there just to get everything the same temperature. But as soon as I get a rolling boil in there, and I'll put the lid back on, not securing it, just putting it on like a regular lid, then I will set my timer for 20 minutes once there's a rolling boil. And then I'll show you coming up. But within, once my timer goes off, I will turn off the heat. I will take it off of the burner. This little burner will hold it, which is kind of funny. And then I'll let it sit 5 to 7 minutes, and then I will take the jars out and put them, I'll have to grab another towel, but I'll put them on the counter where they are in a draft-free area and can be undisturbed for 24 hours. And so, yeah, let me get them, wait for the boil, start the timer, and then I'll pull you up when I'm getting ready to pull them out. All right, see you soon. Alrighty, so my 20-minute timer went off, and so I moved it to that teeny little burner where it's been sitting undisturbed for about 7 minutes. Took off the lid. The reason for this is there's siphoning that can happen with anything that you can. And in my experience, the main reason for siphoning is when the contents of the jar cool too fast. And so, because the reason that the lids seal is because it creates a vacuum as the temperature comes down. But if it comes down too fast, then it kind of messes it up. And anyways, so it's really important not to rush these steps. But anyways, so what I'm going to do is, because these have been sitting, if this was a regular canner, it would be sitting with the basket, you know, the basket you pull out of the thing and put, so it's like they're elevated out. It's the same concept, but it's slowly coming down. So then I'm going to use my little gripper things, and I'm going to pull these out, and I'm going to set them over here. We might hear some pings coming. Let's see. And then we get to look at all of our beautiful work that will stay shelf stable for however long. And yeah, I've got these 6, and then I've got, I think, another 4 or so more to go in the next batch. And I have wonderful applesauce. Oh, I meant to tell you. So you can see here, there's an air bubble, right? There's actually a couple of them. And applesauce does do this, especially if you have a firmer applesauce. And that's okay, because if your applesauce went into the canner without the air bubbles, it's okay if during the canning process it does create an air bubble. But you don't want to put it into the canner with air bubbles, if that makes sense. Just the natural process of the apples and things like that. And I've noticed a lot, actually, or often, that the applesauce will get the bubbles, usually when it's a thicker applesauce. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed. If you've made it this far, you are a trooper, and I hope that you have the world's best applesauce. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below, or if you made this applesauce, let me know. If you liked the video, let me know. If you didn't like it, don't tell me. No, I'm kidding. But anyways, happy canning, and see you another time. Bye.